Hey Misha, can you hear me? I think I got the mic to work. Hey Misha, can you hear me? I think I got the mic to work. Hey Misha, hear me? Oh great. Okay, fantastic. There was some strange option you had to enable. I'll just put on the headphones. Okay, and I can see I can see your chat in the bottom right corner of my screen, so we should be good. So this is the game, Disco Elysium. You see all of it from an isometric perspective, and you wake up. I'll just give you just a very brief rundown of what's actually going on. So you wake up in this hotel room, and just after a real bender, you're super hungover. You have no memory of what's happened. And long story short, you meet the guy I'm traveling with here, Kim Kitsuragi, and you figure out that you're actually here to solve a murder. And I'll tell you where I am in all of this. So you go around, you ask people about the murder, detective style, and where I am now, I've seen the man. Oh, another person's watching. Which is probably fine. I got the man down from where he was hung. The murdered guy, I'll just show you where that was. And it'll be a little bit hard to get you up to speed on the story, so I'll just give you the main beats. So there was a guy hung out here in this tree, got him down. And basically you're trying to figure out what the hell happened, and it turns out that he's had an affair with the lady you can see up there on the roof. He's a mercenary brought in to basically to secure some corporate interests in the city against a workers' union that's organized in the on the harbor end of town over this way. And everything points to the notion that a bunch of these organized labormen, they've probably killed him. That's what the evidence points to, and they're sitting in here, and they've pretty much said, yeah, it was us. But turns out maybe it wasn't them. Maybe it was something else that happened. And I happen to know that, in fact, it wasn't them. It was a sniper on the other end of town that did it. But that really doesn't matter too much. All you have to know is that you find yourself in this city, and there's all of this political tension going on. There was a communist revolution back 50 years or so ago, and at this point the revolution has been brutally stamped out, and corporate interest has taken over. And there's this world government called the Moral Intern that's basically running the place, and you're a lowly police officer trying to figure out what's going on with this murder, and you get embroiled in all of this political stuff with angry communists who still want to effect a revolution, with nostalgic fascists who had power before the revolution happened, but who have now been suppressed also by the world government, the Moral Intern, which is kind of like a modern globalist institution. And it is a sort of parallel universe from the real world. So you have some of the same political factions you'd find in the real world, and there's, a failed communist revolution, and there is today a globalized world that leaves many people impoverished and not very happy, and there's a lot of nostalgic longing for the past. And basically the murder sort of figures into all of this, in that these communists, they're trying to say that they're strong enough to hold the city, to keep the corporate people away. They're trying to send a signal, and that's why they want the corporate guys to think that they're the ones who did it. It's hard to explain. It's really, all of it is just a entangled mess. But there's just this setting of high political tension with these different factions, and I guess that's really all you really need to know. You can read up on the story if you want on Wikipedia or something like that, but that's just what I'll give you at this point. And at this point in the game, I'm relatively far into it. I'm sort of getting close to solving the murder, but I'm not quite there yet. Right, you get the overall. That's good to know. Okay, it isn't that important, and it's really, really complicated, so I won't get more into it. But my idea was to look at the accents of all of these different people. So the game is immensely complex, and you have all of these different people with all of these different backgrounds. It is kind of a world city, this Revachol, where all of this is going on. So you have all of these different people with all of these different backgrounds. And there are some patterns to who speaks like what. So this guy, for instance, this is a young fella with a very distinct sort of working class British accent. I couldn't identify it exactly. I think it might be what would you say, Liverpoolian from Liverpool. You can hear what he sounds like here.
Fuck does Kuno care?
Fuck does Kuno care?
The fuck about it? Just a couple of pigs sniffing around in the dirt. That seems pretty fucking suspicious to Kuno.
It's like as soon as you talk to him, you get certain connotations popping up, right? You get certain associations to working class British environment, sort of dilapidated, sort of I don't know. Well, at least people who aren't too well off and who might have various problems, who might be in various ways economically challenged. I don't know how to say, but in any case, it's pretty clear that you get certain associations with this guy, and it does turn out actually that his father is this violent drunk who beats him, and he's out here in the street trying to fend for himself. Yeah. And he's and I'll only be, just to clarify, I'll only be showing you some of the main players in all of this. This guy knows a lot because he was there when the guy was hung, this murdered fella.
Yeah,
I'll just make him speak a little bit. Kuno S is a girl. She stands a little bit further up. You can't see it in the screen now, but she has the same kind of accent, I think.
Probably climbed. Kuno was busy down the road when that shit went down. You heard Kuno? Kuno wasn't even in Martinez. Kuno wasn't in Revachol. Kuno wasn't regional.
You have the glottal stop. It just seems very sort of, I guess, I don't know how you would best describe it. He reminds me of a sort of street urchin from like a 19th century social realist novel or something like that, or a film about the same types of people.
I don't know. Some fucking Mesk or I don't know, some other place. Night City. Kuno was in fucking Night City.
Fucking Night City?
There is no Night City anywhere. That sounds like the name of a city in some pulp science fiction novel.
Why you gotta be riding Kuno's ass? You haven't been where Kuno's been. You haven't been in Kuno's head. You wanna know where Kuno was? You wanna know what Kuno's been fucking up to?
Don't tell him that, Kuno. It's lame.
She has kind of the same accent. She's also this street urchin. They've banded together.
It's not fucking lame. Kuno's building Kuno's City. Night City. Rage City. The City of Rage. That's it. And it's not lame.
Lame.
That's the name of Kuno's City, bitch. Get the fuck off Kuno's back. This shit ain't about that. Fuck are you talking about? What is this contusion shit?
He says you're stupid, Kuno. They want to make you stupid again.
Oh, did Kuno make your shit sniffing harder? Obstruction of shit sniffing. This is Kuno's kingdom. Kuno fucking rules here.
You hear? He's thinking the kid has amassed quite the vocabulary of law enforcement terms, but he's not going to stick his nose into this.
Me and my partner are wondering, do you guys puff Peter?
Right, I can see much of what you're writing, but not all of it. I'll go back to the chat. I can see that you write that these features are found in North England. And, but it's not entirely consistent, and that sounds about right to me. They are getting creative with these accents, so right. I think they're probably aware that these accents don't map neatly onto existing social categories. They more so, I think, want to evoke a certain feel about the characters. And what I like about this is that it sort of evokes this whole social category of these street urchins who have nothing, who have no future, and this guy indeed has no future as things look now. You can find his dad in the game if you go look for him. So he's right out of social realist fiction. He sleeps in a rundown apartment up north. And I just like how the accent and the dialect, his word choice, just immediately communicate to the player what kind of a character he is. I'll just check what you've written. But that's fantastic. I mean, for all of these characters, pretty much, it won't be an issue to go back and find YouTube video where they speak in particular. So don't feel anxious about sort of trying to nail their accents right now. That's probably not worth focusing on. Exactly. You can find all of them in. Great, fantastic. We can find all of them on YouTube, no problem at all. Or I can go back and record some stuff, something like that. Won't be an issue.
Do you smell that?
What's this?
Can you not detect that inimitable whiff of dissatisfaction and restlessness? That sense that the world is in need, without a doubt. Your politico-olfactory cortex doesn't deceive. Certainement.
What is
the
this?
precocious communist youth. A symbol of a kinder, more hopeful future. Now's a chance to establish contact.
Oh, okay, this is because I've opted into communism. I'm trying to become a communist in the game, so you get a prompt here. I'll just ignore that for now. So another pair of characters that I think are quite interesting is first this girl Cindy. She's called Cindy the Skull, and you meet her very early on in the game. Yeah, the voice qualities for Rhetoric Encyclopedia, I think those are all the same. It's this rapper, I forget his name, who speaks for all of these mind characters, all of these different faculties of the protagonist's mind that you're dealing with. But she's sort of communist. I think actually she's a anarcho-communist, so she's like an anarchist who wants to establish communism on some anarchist principles. I couldn't tell you too much about it. But you meet her, and then immediately after, you get this sort of contrast case in this woman, Joyce Messier, who's she's a representative of something called the Wild Pines Group, which is a really rich organization that controls a lot in the game, a really important organization. And she's sort of the royalty, or at least the higher class of this world that you'll find yourselves in. So there is this sort of fun contrast case here. I'll just show you how both of these people speak, and you immediately get some certain connotations, I think, once you hear them speak, and it helps you orient yourself in the world, I think. So let's hear Cindy.
Hello again, officers. Have you come to admire my mural?
The lieutenant is desperately searching for another handkerchief.
Right, and she nods disdainfully toward Joyce here. There's some tension here.
Hatred, disgust.
But it's more interesting to hear what she sounds like.
Is more present in her girl. The woman on the boat does not notice her staring.
And you see Joyce there. She's sort of classically aristocratic looking, I guess, or at least sort of high class British looking.
That is on her.
That is on her.
Eye on her.
Ozon is an archipelago 2 days' travel away from Revachol. Its
Yeah,
moneyed
I'll play a
residents,
bunch of her
prestigious
dialogue right now.
restaurants and upscale boutiques rarely have reason to visit Martinez.
On a first-name basis with her, are we? Piggy's moving up in the world. It's where they grow whores like her, and their whoremen. Have you got a crush on her? Aching for an opportunity to defend her honor?
I also heard the glottal stop there.
I ain't no snitch, pigstein. Go forth and forage in someone else's shit. No shortage of squealers in these parts.
Actually, there is a shortage of people who talk to us in a normal, calm, informative manner.
We weren't put on this earth to make your life pleasant, fucko. Ooh. Not only have you found my address, you've discovered my biggest secret. I'm a coal miner.
She does have eyes that seem to be smeared with coal.
Yes. I keep hoping a shaft will collapse on me, but somehow it never happens.
So to my untrained eyes, her accent doesn't come too. It isn't too far off from Kuno's accent, the boy we spoke to before.
Does anyone in a city like this?
In a city like this.
If there's pain about any particular home she's lost,
Anyway,
she's
let me
buried
know if you
deep.
want to hear more from her.
Fortified.
But again,
Shoot,
all of these
Piggy.
can be found
It's what you do.
on YouTube. So you find her, you talk to her, and then immediately after you get this contrast case in Joyce Messier, and she has this received pronunciation. I'd actually like to hear if you agree with that designation of mine, that this is received pronunciation, sort of bordering on something you might call posh. It sounds like aristocratic almost, I think, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? Word has travelled, yes, but nothing of real substance has surfaced yet, I gather. Wild Pines has eyes on the intersection, but not ears.
Right.
It appears we are being monitored every step we take, colleague. Did we have any other business here?
What would you like to know? Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around?
There is a pinch of defensiveness in her voice, but it is playful.
Yes, we are. We are on Le Caillou.
Right, you agree about Joyce. That's interesting because she's the only character who speaks like that in the entire game, and she's the only, or she's probably the most privileged character in the game. She represents this international corporation, which, like I said just before, is like the aristocracy. I think that's explicitly mentioned by another character of this game. You don't have a traditional aristocracy, so she kind of stands in for that. So she's really privileged. Right, no, exactly, that's my impression too, and that's certainly not a coincidence. So they want you to get certain associations about this woman as soon as you hear her speak. You might think that she's sort of uppity and arrogant and stuff like that. Those are some associations you get, and she turns out not really to be when you sort of probe her, but that is the impression that you get.
We are, and the city of Revachol is on the island of Le Caillou.
Really? Cindy also received pronunciation. I mean, I at least heard a glottal stop when she spoke.
She nods attentively.
I mean, if both of them are received pronunciation, there would have to be
Good.
very different variants of that in my estimate, at least. I think she sounds very, very different. But they are sort of made to be contrasting characters, and there is a little bit of back and forth between them sometimes when you speak to them.
Have you come to admire my mural? Can't you tell? I'm painting a beautiful mural, an aereo graffitio visible from low orbit.
Right, so there's also just the question of word choice. It's not just accent, and I'm not quite sure if we want to keep it to accent just to have a clear thesis, just to be strict about it, or whether you should include something like that. Sociolect, I guess you might call it too.
I haven't really started it yet. I'm waiting for the right words.
Mural.
This place is severely lacking in havoc. Not even the occasional trash can fire to break up the tedium. I thought I'd mix it up, you know. Summon the forces of crime and social chaos with a wall-sized invitation. Have you ever tried your hand at graffitio? When faced with a blank wall, most people write unimaginative stuff, like pigs go home and Mona was here. We rarely see pigs round here, though. Just union cards. And my name's not Mona, so...
She wants it to be something true and total.
I see.
Have you ever tried your hand at graffitio? When faced with a blank wall, most people write. We rarely...
She wants it to be something true.
Yeah? Lying is cool, I guess.
The lieutenant is desperately searching. Hatred, disgust. The woman on the boat.
That is on her. Someone's got to keep an eye on her.
But it's true that... Right, it's not entirely consistent with the use of glottal stops.
Oslo
That's true.
is an archipelago, 2 days travel away from Rivershaw. It's moneyed residents.
On a first-name basis with her, are we? Piggy's moving up in the world. Pig's not half as dumb as he looks.
There's definitely some contrast there. Okay, so that's what she sounds like, basically. And it is hard for me to I couldn't tell you exactly what these characters speak like, and I think it's supposed to be a little wacky, a little, I mean, not entirely consistent, except for Joyce. Perhaps I could see someone speaking like her. She's very stereotypical, and I think she's supposed to be. So there's definitely some contrast between, I think, Cindy and Joyce, and especially Kuno and Kuno S and Joyce. And it's not a coincidence that they sort of lie along the same axis here in the game. You go up here and you meet Joyce. Yes, yeah, Joyce is consistent. Yeah, they really want her to represent something. There's also Plaisance in here. She's also she aspires to be a little bit like Joyce. She's the owner of a business that's failing, so she isn't as well off as she'd like to be, but she has sort of the same social aspirations.
You broke down the back door. The
back door.
The door. It's all gone now. Dark psychic energy leeching onto my shop. I suppose it's all over now. I guess there's no escape.
She's not really the most important character, but I think it is significant that she has something like the same accent. I mean, I get it's not exactly the same, but at least I get some of the same connotations.
Okay, I'm willing to listen. We are set on the path. There's little else to do.
Her facade has dropped. Now you see the curiosity behind the fear.
But before we go on, did you encounter the malignant entity?
She's very superstitious.
You did? Then it has to be true. I've suspected that this woman-shaped energy must be connected to the curse ever since I first saw her. Did you see that she lives inside the chimney? Yes. That chimney is part of the building's central furnace, and it's enormous.
It's
She
enormous.
has barricaded herself behind some metal security curtains. God knows what she's doing there. Some unnatural magic, I assume. You should go find the entity and ask what happened to all the companies in the building. And do return to me after you've talked to it. I'm quite anxious to know what she has to say about the curse.
Right. I mean, I couldn't. Right, they sound a little bit like overdone, perhaps. The diphthongs. I mean, I really couldn't tell you at that level of detail. I just pick up on a general feel of, this is higher class, like clipped English, dialect, accent. Right, and now I'll show you a completely different class of characters. So these characters are, if anything in the game, they're representatives of ultra-liberalism. They're rich, or at least they are ideologically, they aspire to be rich. They're all about the money. And now I'll talk to a couple of the fascists. So they are also called, the nice name for them is traditionalists, but they are, in this game, they tend to be racist, they tend to be nostalgic for the past, they tend to be misogynist. They're generally not very nice people. And they tend to speak with a dialect that's very it's very French. And some of the backstory for this game is that the city you're in, Revachol, that's part of they speak French there, and they have for a long time. So the old royalty, they were all French, at least. In the game world, they were the equivalent of French, you could say. So it's probably not a coincidence, I don't think, that these fascists speak with a very distinctly French accent. I mean, they want to harken back to their cultural past. So listen to how this guy sounds. Very pronounced, I think, at least in certain cases. He's even labeled a racist.
Come to tell me to fuck off again?
Come to tell me to fuck off again.
You could push him by asking him to show you the soles of his boots.
It's about biological determinism, natural law, the sorting of the races. Not the most popular topic nowadays, with a coalition in charge, You might want...
Change the topic.
Yeah.
The way he says it makes it almost...
I'm not the only one. Look, I've read books. The science of racial theory has all been proved, even if some people don't want to accept it.
I don't think this guy is entirely consistent. Sometimes he really, I guess you might say, rolls it out. He says Revachol, like that, and other times he doesn't do it.
People who've studied this say that you and me are superior by design. So, naturally, we Occidentals should be in charge. Obviously, you can see the merits in that.
The merits in that. That's definitely meant to be suggestive of French.
So, lately we Occidentals have experienced an unfortunate downturn when members of the superior race cease to believe in their innate superiority. They stop competing for resources. This concerns you, policeman, so you better be vigilant. The damned kids are showing up good lately. Same with the mosquitoes. And the other intruder species too. They're on the precipice of cultural victory.
Cultural victory.
Cultural victory? What is this then?
It's true. Also, you need to realize the dangers of mixing races. Who knows what might happen if people don't stay in their birthplace? You might end up with a new sub-race, with unknown characteristics, leading to extra competition. That's why you've got to control the offspring.
The offspring.
Go right ahead. You may be a cop, but that won't help you avoid
right, and it's not that all of the it's only the fascists who speak with a French accent, but it's pronounced in them. I'll just show.
A lot of moral fiber on what happened? Did your balls shrivel up?
I'll just go to another fascist here who's also very French speaking, but even your partner has a French accent. So it's also just because you are in a history that's historically spoken French. But I think these fascists, it's meant to show that they really want to harken back to this history, this monarchical history of cultural supremacy. I think that's what it's meant to show, because I think none of the communists actually speak with a French accent. That's probably not a coincidence. Here's probably the most, I would say this is the most important fascist in the game. This guy, he's actually not so unsympathetic. He's really, he's not as unsympathetic as the other guys. He's really sort of nostalgic, and he's actually working for the communists now because he has to, because things have gone south for him. But he's not as bad as the other guy. But listen to this guy.
The purity of snow always reminds me of the purity of a man's soul, if he's got principles. Unfortunately, I don't. And like most,
it's very rough voice.
I have no qualms about assisting law enforcement, but this affair has passed me by completely.
And you can also tell he has a French name.
In Martinez, the union is the law. So can you really blame them?
Can you really blame them?
Cop is a pejorative term. I don't have a problem with policemen. On the contrary, I admire the effort to bring order to our streets.
So I think this is supposed to signal some nationalism in him, that he's really fond of the old suzerain, the old sort of sovereignty, the old sort of French government, and the French monarch and his reign.
If I knew, I would not be afraid to tell you. I simply don't. I'm an old man, not a coward. The daily business of the riffraff no longer concerns me.
This is a man with a lot of past, but little present, and almost no future.
Right. A fricative, I see. But yeah, so one challenge with this will be to characterize these voices if they're not entirely consistent, I guess. But I think you can tell what they're going for. I mean, this is supposed to be very French, and just sort of picking out some of the main features, I think, would be enough. Right. No, I think you're right about that. And this guy he's talking to, he's more sympathy for the communists. They're sort of old, kind of buddies, kind of enemies. It's a long story, but he's sort of meant to be contrasted with this guy who works for the communists, but who's probably more like an opportunist. He just goes whichever way the wind blows. But he's a really sympathetic guy, though, and he has nowhere near the same accent.
Pleasure to see you again, officer. How may I head the citizens' militia on this fine day?
I think it's still supposed to be vaguely reminiscent of French. But it's not nearly as strong, in my estimate.
Sweet, sweet Jenny. Ask away, officer. I knew her all my life. She died of pneumonia 2 winters ago. It was a quiet passage, peaceful. René and I were both by her bedside when she...
died. No use sugarcoating it. Won't bring her back, will it now?
Departed. Until the very end she couldn't decide between us. The most indecisive woman I've ever met.
A quick grimace of pain passes over René's features, but he immediately regains control.
She could never make up her mind about anything. What to have for breakfast, favorite color, or which one of us...
Right, I still think he's he's French sounding,
still engaged to her.
But it's not as marked.
Confused there. Couldn't let us be happy.
Right, I'd agree with that. And again, I don't think that's a coincidence. They want a contrast there.
He suddenly remembers.
Of course.
But you can tell it's not as though I'm making it sound as though all of the fascists speak French, and I think the French accent is a kind of implicit measure of how traditionalist and how sort of nostalgic these people are. But even Kim Kitsuragi here, who grew up in Revachol, he also speaks with a French accent. You can hear.
Yes. What do you want to know? No, it's not a particularly mysterious case. The deceased is a security guard for a corporation involved in a labor dispute. It doesn't take a DeLorean polymath to put the pieces together. I just don't see the case getting more mysterious than that. I can assure nothing like that will happen. Do you know why not? Because it's not part of reality.
The gesture resembles an orchestra conduct so desperately mundane. There's something the lieutenant isn't seeing. The universe is too irrational, too morally complex.
I haven't. He looks Korean. He comes from sort of the game's equivalent of East Asia, and there's a whole thing about that. He's really anxious to say that he's left all of that behind, and now he's a Revalcholian. So he is from where we are, basically, and so he has a French accent. I do believe the voice actor is actually French, if I'm not mistaken, for this guy.
What's there to say? It's just stupidity.
Stupidity.
The cop kind. Our precincts can't decide if Martinez is part of Jamrock or the Industrial Harbor. Yours or mine, as if we somehow own parts of the city. Typical street gang mentality. So we've let the Union make a mockery of law enforcement here. And now it's come to its natural conclusion.
No, and I'm certain it isn't supposed to sound Asian. He is supposed. I'm almost certain to have a French accent,
well,
and it just makes sense in the
it's
context
less a
of his
matter
character.
Who gets to Police Martinez than who has to. It's an orphan district, in other words. I think the dispatch desk just told both our stations about the hanging. There was quite the brouhaha at the 57th, I can tell you that. Time to settle it, they said. Cop off. But I assure you, I am not their finest or toughest with 102 cases solved. What I am is least interested in a pissing competition.
I'll be right back. Just need to go to the restaurant. Okay, so that's Kim Kitsuragi, that's your partner.
So, he volunteered to represent the 57th.
Yes, it's a holy...
He's actually glad it's addressed now.
Let's get out of this. Okay, the next guy I'd like you to listen to is the leader, or at least the de facto leader of the communists, and I have a really hard time with his accent. I mean, you can tell that he speaks really distinctively, and that's supposed to matter in some way, I think, but I can't place it at all. I think it's a British accent of sorts, but I'm really not sure. I mean, it would be nice to know if there was something about him that's supposed to point to what kind of a guy he is. I think there is. It's very nasal, if I'm not mistaken. His voice. And he's a kind of he espouses communist ideals, but it turns out he's more of like he's like a bit of a parody. He's more like a corporate fat cat actually, and he's not afraid to bribe and intimidate people and use sort of bad tactics in general whenever it suits him. So he's a communist in sort of a very loose sense of the word, in that his methods are well, they don't live up to his ideals, let's put it that way. Everard Clare is his name. And he sits in here in his little office.
Yes, of course, it smells. We're getting crates and pallets calling to mind.
What is this?
Vast stands of winter pines. A swirl of ancient odors absorbed by heavy carpet fibers. The whole place could probably... The lieutenant gives you... Meanwhile, Everard Clare clatters away on his typewriter.
He's, Okay, here we go.
Mr. Dubois, I hear the meeting with Titus was a glowing success. That's such a relief. Titus can be a handful sometimes.
He has a very distinctive way of speaking.
Now, what can Everard Clare do for you today? Mr. Dubois, really? Do I look like a man who has time for underground communists? I'm as above ground as it gets.
He's got you there. You've got to be 10 or 12 meters up. That's all you're going to get out.
Now, was there anything else you wish to discuss today? Yes, my best men are tracking it down. Some kids saw some other kids running away with it. Some folks said a paranoid schizophrenic might have it. Leads are being checked, Harry. What's that, Harry? You're getting a little pale. Is it the words paranoid schizophrenic and lost gun in one sentence? Don't worry, it's just a lead. It'll probably turn out to be nothing.
And he's sort of contrasted with Joyce. You remember Joyce, the sort of posh character. He doesn't like her, and he actually wants to intimidate her. He wants his tactics to intimidate her. He's standard British English.
Great! You want to bounce something off your old friend Mr. Clare, right? Well, let's hear it, Harry.
Right, he has a... No, he's a hard case for me. I don't know what he's sort of meant to... I think the nasality of his voice is supposed to go with the overall sort of aberrant appearance. He's very obese. His eyes... I don't know what that condition is called, but each of his eyeballs point in the opposite direction to the other. Right.
Yes. Low-balling, of course. This isn't a casino, Harry. Real people, real livelihoods are at stake here. But everything's a casino for those rich types.
His expression makes it clear. This is childish and irresponsible behavior.
If she actually wants to see me, she will find a way. Any good negotiator would. And I just don't have anything to discuss with a bad negotiator.
Right. So you'd call him very standard. I mean, that sounds about right to me.
It's as simple as
Is it true that he's nasal? Or I just get this weird vibe from how he's speaking.
What do you mean, Harry? Nothing. I let him go.
Right. Right, no, exactly. I mean, that nasality, I think it is supposed to signal something about him. I mean, he is this really... he's quite overbearing, and he's duplicitous, and he's sort of on top of everything. He makes you feel intimidated at points in the game. Right, I need to look into those stereotypes, because we might want to broaden the article to more so than just accent if it's relevant. I'm just nervous about it sort of getting out of hand, because there are a lot of characters in this game. But I guess as long as you focus on the main players. Right. We have to figure out which type of nasality it is. Yeah, it's very, very strong.
Empty all your barrels on me, Harry.
Yes, this you notice he says Harry, and the protagonist's name, my name, in pretty much every single sentence he utters. It's sort of overbearing, I think.
Vanished? Harry, the woman left her casserole in the oven and couldn't make it here in time for the voting. Oh, did I leave my casserole on? Better go home and check. The election can wait. When she got back, the whole thing was over.
Wait, there was no mention of a casserole from Joyce.
Harry, Harry, Harry. Do not fixate on this little matter. Maybe it was a rabbit stew, or a hairdryer, or an iron. The point is, her heart wasn't in it.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't noticed the RPO. Oh, that's right. So there is a sort of retracted so that's standard British English, isn't it? Or is it RP?
That much is true. His heart truly is. If it's spilled blood you're looking for, then there certainly isn't any in his expression.
I mean, is it sort of somewhere between RP and more and less sort of standard British English dialects or something like that? Is it somewhere between those? I mean, he definitely doesn't sound like Joyce. But right.
Absolutely, Harry. What's on your mind? Most certainly, Harry. Nothing brightens my day like brainstorming these things with you.
Oh, yeah. Right, mainstream RP, where you might call posh opera RP or sort of posh RP or something like, yeah.
Oh, Liz is a bright one. I paid for that law degree myself, thinking it'll probably turn her all fancy. But hell, Harry, she came back a firebrand socialist. Sometimes she scares me with her zeal.
Right, you think he's slightly posh every now and then? Right. Well, that is interesting, and he is sort of. What's funny about him is he claims to be a socialist, but in many ways he's sort of a capitalist at heart. He wants to push people out he doesn't like and get his way. I mean, in that stereotypical way. Right,
By
right.
all means, Harry. What's on your mind?
I'll just show you a couple more, but I had problems with that guy. This helped me get a kind of fix on him, so that's really very helpful. I mean, he is a key character. He's the main representative of communism. But funnily enough, all of the other communists pretty much have. Let me think. At least most of them have a sort of ethnic. In the game world, they have an ethnic accent, so they might sound like Spanish or. This guy, I think, sounds vaguely Irish, perhaps.
Oh, hey, mister. I'm not gonna bother you with a long greeting, just like we talked
More
about
like
before.
Scottish, I guess,
I know you're
right?
probably a busy man being an important police officer and all, and personally, I think the more people keeping the peace, the better.
But he's not an important character.
Oh, yes, yes. I leave all kinds of notes for myself. That old head of mine ain't so good at keeping things in no more. Of course, mister. I'm more than happy to be helpful. Oh, that one. That should be empty as far as I know. Lots of containers.
Right, Scottish. They have all sorts of different accents, the communists in this game, but they don't really speak French. That has to be significant in some way. Or they don't speak with a French accent, I should say. Like the like many of the fascists do. Right, I guess that's why I said Irish. Great. No, I agree. I get a Scottish vibe too. I couldn't put it as technically as you can, but that's the vibe I get too. And then there's this is another kind of central communist. He speaks like this.
Hola, wandering man. How can I help you? What's that, boy?
Now's your chance. Remember, communists are notoriously skittish, so it's best to insinuate your way in.
Don't think I've ever met a Kras personally. Then again, I've never been to Krat. Have you tried a butcher shop?
Okay, maybe it's time to abandon the subtle approach.
Could be coming from one of the jam lorries. Cargo's been sitting out for a while.
Okay, maybe it's time to abandon the subtle approach.
Ah, now I see. Can't say I'm surprised. You seem to take your communism seriously. Not a bad thing, mind you. It's good for a man to take time to think about the whole socio-political world picture.
Oh, he certainly
so it's
likes
like
to take his
South
time,
American, or
especially when politics are at issue.
So you've given up copying and now you're hunting comunistas. Care to say why? Oh, I see. I wish I could help. Unfortunately, I don't know many comunistas.
right. I think that's the vibe, I guess. He's also he's called in the game "Call Me Mañana."
Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I'm not institutional. A man's got to blaze his own trail, in my book.
Okay, I couldn't speak to those things. I don't know what that means.
Okay, so maybe he's not...
But you know, I did meet a genuine ideologo a few months ago. Perhaps he's your guy.
You know, a guy with a theory. Someone who likes to pit his theory against other theories in deadly theory combat.
I see.
It was late one night as I was leaving the army. He was waiting on the corner in a bright white jacket. Classic Saramirizian style. He asked me for a light. We shared cigarettes. Then he asked me if I ever thought about getting into some of the extra physical branches of communism. No idea. I took it to mean he was asking me to join some sort of underground cell.
It may be a little bit all over the place. I mean, the no idea, that the way he says that reminds me of Mexican, I think, of a Mexican accent.
A very old school organizing technique. The sort of thing comunistas used to do before the revolution.
The revolution.
The same thing I always tell people who try to press some claim on me. I said,
right.
Every boyadero rides alone. I couldn't tell you. Once I declined his offer, we finished our cigarettes and he disappeared back into the night. Just before he melted into the shadows, he turned to me and remembered Dobrava and Abadanais. And then he was gone.
No, he doesn't sound Russian. There are a few characters in this game that have a Russian accent. I think they're working class.
Been wondering about that myself. Some comunista inside talk with me. Not meant for the wider public. They love that kind of thing. You'd have to ask someone who knows the ideologo personally. I have to say though, it sounds like you found yourselves a proper hunt.
The man whispers a jaunty tune.
Okay, but he's not the most important character anyway. There's also this guy. He's another fascist, but his loyalties lie with a different country than the country that we're in. So he has a very distinct accent, but it is very, very pronounced. It's a sort of French colony he comes from with a distinct culture, and he's very mindful of what that culture is bound to achieve, in his opinion. And he has the same general convictions as the other fascists. It's only that he roots for a different country.
The unpromising race pupil returns.
That's really strong. Whatever it is, it's really strong.
Don't be vulgar. White or not has got little to do with this. The race enigma runs much deeper than that.
And sometimes they're not entirely consistent. I mean, normally he says race enigma, but here he says race enigma. So I don't know if that's just kind of sloppiness on part of the game's voice actors or what it is.
There must be some friction.
Because there's so much
He's
text here.
Well hidden, however. Mr. Clare is a man of vision and means. He has the will to confront International Capital, which is something your race naivistic communists never did. Also, to serve is noble.
I see.
It takes discipline.
Discipline.
Your petulant individualism has only contributed to your race failure. It is lax and moronic. Idiotic communism is the single greatest contributor to your race descent.
No, I think you're right about that. I had the same thought just now. Maybe like a French colony or something like that.
Individualism,
I think that's probably right.
sexually transmitted diseases. Above all, rampant multinational finance still reigning large. Tell me, where have you gotten your love of pathetic communism from? Degenerate youth culture? Rock and roll music?
Rock and roll. I think that's right. I think you're probably right on. Congo English. I saw someone online mentioning Haitian Creole, and I heard someone speaking that, and I couldn't quite recognize him in it, but that might also be something.
Offshoots of the Seminoles people invented disco while having sex under the influence of cocaine. It is a shame upon my race. But what is done is done. I am not surprised you enjoy it so much. This has happened to... Meshhead stoically looks to the distance. Racists are generally not very good examples of their race. Welcome to Revachol. You hear him yell at a redhead woman visiting a fritter nearby. I am not like them. I am craniometric perfection. I have taken the trouble to permanently draw a phrenologic grid on my skull and features. This should dispel any doubt. True, that is a noble cranium, but you got a hard noggin yourself.
Right, okay. I'll find the next character. I think we'll soon get through some of the most important ones.
You should enter a deep race.
We'll soon be through them. Great. Okay, so these guys are from the workers' union. They are they're at least sympathetic to the communists. And from what I can tell, all of them except one speak with a sort of gruff American accent. I don't know how better to characterize it than that. You might be able to. There is a sort of roughness to it and a sort of workman quality to it, and I think that's not a coincidence. I mean, they're meant to connote a kind of rural American roughness. They're like, it's like they're in a diner, and you can also tell by their clothes, I guess, that this is the kind of thing they're going for. And they're very loyal to each other and to a woman that's deeply implicated in the story. That's a long story, but just the way they are, I mean, it's not a coincidence that they speak with this accent. I'll let you hear them speak now.
It's you again. What is it? Why? Sounds like you're making her a suspect in this. Not on my watch, you're not. Ruby's one of us. We're not gonna throw her under your moral intern steamroller. Fuck that shit.
And fuck you too, moral
Ruby is missing. If you hide from the police in a murder investigation, you become a suspect.
That's nothing. That's just legalese. You don't even have a sound theory. I don't want to be rude, but we're trying to get some R&R here. Think you could fuck off now?
I think we'll keep sticking around, Titus. You'll be surprised at how quickly a theory presents itself if you...
From the corner of your eye, you see a little bird fly into the bush, right behind the window.
Right. I mean, it's definitely American English of some sort. I'd like for some of the other guys to speak, because they're all part of this group called the Hardy Boys, which is also quite suggestive.
What is it?
And they just exude this workman-like quality, this sort of roughness. And yeah, no, it does. Oh, I can't get them to speak. That sucks. Yeah, no, that's a good type
you again.
To characterize.
What
them.
is it?
Nothing is happening. Sorry, you're not coming up with anything. Again, there we go. Your mind is a relaxed muscle. Blissful idiot.
See if I can't. Oh, okay. I can't get them to say anything else at this point, but they pretty much all speak like that guy, with some degree of variance. They all speak like him. Oh, that sucks that I can't get them to say anything more than that. Right, he did, but they pretty much all speak like that. There is one with more of a, what I think is a Mexican accent, and his nationality is also mentioned at one point, that he's not from where the others are from. Just show you, I think, one more, and I guess you'll have a sort of decent idea of the kind of variety you find. This guy right here, he's also an ultra-liberal. He's not rich at all like Joyce, but he's also an ultra-liberal. He just wants to sell illegal stuff, basically. I think his accent is it Indian or something like that? Let's hear him.
Everything's still cool here, officer. Me? It's a boring story, officer. Who cares about the past? I'm all business.
I mean,
now.
if it isn't Indian, it's definitely close to Indian.
This man probably comes from Seaguy, sometimes known as the Apricot Suzerainty, an archipelago in...
Very sharp, officer. I'm Serais from the Seaguy province, of the Serais Empire. The apricot suzerainty, you know?
Right.
The apricot suzerainty is what the Seaguy archipelago is commonly known as in Revachol. It's a bit of a fraught term, I'm sure you understand.
No, apricots come from Seaguy. My grandma used to grow them. But Seaguy is a shithole. That's why I came to Revachol. Here's much better for an independent entrepreneur. Less laws. Speaking of, why not support an independent local entrepreneur? I send half my profits back to my grandma in Seaguy.
Well, if it's for his grandma...
Me? It's a boring story, officer. Who cares about the past? I'm all business now. All Revachol.
This man probably comes from Seaguy, sometimes known as the apricot.
Very sharp, officer. I'm Serais, from the Seaguy province of the Serais Empire. The apricot suzerainty, you know?
The apricot
No, apricots come from Seaguy. My grandma used to grow them. But Seaguy is a shithole. That's why I came to Revachol. Here's much better for an independent entrepreneur. Less laws. Speaking of, why not support an independent local entrepreneur? I send half my...
Well,
right, no, that makes sense.
Grandma,
definitely Indian.
You should buy a lot
And
of things.
He's the only character in the game with that accent. I guess he's supposed to connote... No, I don't know who exactly.
Shine on these sunglasses lasts a...
And I guess finally let's go to the most dilapidated part of town. I mean, the working class people in the game, I can't show you all of them because there are so many characters, but they generally speak, at least in my, from what I can tell, they speak with like working class British English accents of various sorts, Russian in some cases. Here's another one. This is a drunk. I think he speaks with... Oh, let's hear him.
The legend! He's back. And firstly, I got smokes and piss and a little speed to spice things up.
What's this called? Is this what's called Cockney or something like that? I'm not sure.
Hi, by amphetamine I mean speed.
Spade?
Sure did, buddy boy. That's why I said amphetamine. I mean speed. I mean amphetamine. I got both. Hi, what I said. Good, my man. Now what can I offer you?
So definitely a sort of working class connoting British English accent, whereas this guy who was successful but who has now lost his business and lost everything he had, and who's a real sort of ambitious capitalist, he sounds General American if I'm not mistaken, and that's also not a coincidence, I don't think. And they want this guy to evoke a sort of American entrepreneurial spirit or something like that, I think. But he's failed.
Tequila sunset.
Let's see if we can get him to say something.
What's in a name?
Hey, Spiral Boy, you gonna share that?
Come on.
Shut up, guys. I'm telling a story here. Something happened to you. Something happened to me, too. My actual name is George. But around here, you already know. I was once a reasonably high net worth individual. A founder/junior partner at a high concept creative services agency. When my story begins, I had just landed a major contract with an insurance firm. I used the profits from my agency to finance what I called a cultural incubator. Abstract value generation, value per person, high concept stuff. I developed the paradigm, worked within the paradigm, but the burden of leadership weighed heavily on me. So I went jogging every so often to keep myself sane.
I mean, wouldn't you say that's General American? It's sort of very standard.
22 full-time employees.
Right,
An
exactly.
all-star team. A potentially historical set of individuals.
And that's not a
Worrying
coincidence.
about
He's
them
a
often kept me
failed
up
capitalist, this guy. So this game, if I haven't already said that in general, it just criticizes every ideology. They all go to shit pretty much, or at least it makes fun of them in various ways. He's super failed, this guy, and he's just a drunk now.
It helped, truly. With my trusty Sansaric Lycra tracksuit, I felt like I could conquer the world. But now dreams are worn thin, much like my tracksuit. One day I left on my evening run.
Right.
So I was
okay, so I
halfway
guess we've
done
heard
with
enough.
my usual lap. I made naturally the situation reality.
There's
so I
so
made
much
my
text
way
in this
across the
game.
yard. I ran. People are
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
when
yeah.
anyway. So now you've heard my tragic tale. What do you think? Like nothing? I don't remember. That doesn't mean you're wrong.
But apart from that, I mean, so I think that there are some definite connotations you're meant to have with a lot of these characters, but I couldn't. I'm not sure if we should just focus on accent. I mean, whatever we do, I don't think we need to focus. We need to be extremely specific. If we can say that each accent evokes this or that type, or this or that class, or this or that country, and give a sort of a few main defining features, like you've already done in the chat, I think that would be fine. And then the argument I would want to make with that is that this basically helps world building. So this game is really, really big. Right. The game is really, really big, and you need to get a sense of where you are, where your position, sort of socio-morally, what these different people are all about, and you need to get a sense of that very, very fast. And I think how they speak helps you to orient in the world, basically. That's the kind of argument I'd like to make, even in this alternative universe, where really it's not the case that I mean, there's no serious reason why these people would adopt accents that are broadly in line with the kinds of accents you'd expect of similar people in the real world, right? Because accents are accidents. They are not indicative of anything intrinsic about the person. They're just something you learn to speak. So it could have been the case that Joyce spoke like Kuno or something like that, you know, Joyce Messier up here, but she still ends up with this upper RP accent. She's, I'd say, yeah, she isn't a deceiver. In any case, I think you're meant to be suspicious of her and to see her as kind of haughty, and she's aloof. She's not really part of the world. She doesn't understand what goes on for the man in the street, but she's very well educated. She can tell you about the world, about how things work on the global scale, about business, about capital, even about sort of almost cosmological matters about how the world works. She's very educated. She's generally a pretty nice woman, actually. I think you're meant to be very suspicious of her to begin with, but she's not so bad. She's not really, I don't think, a bad person. She's not meant to be. Right, which traits in particular? That she would be deceptive, or just the kinds of traits that I mentioned? I mean, there are so many characters, and we could just keep going on, but no, you know, you're right about that. Right. She is. And then you have people like this guy who's a trucker, but a bit of a poetic trucker.
Kind of a snow limbo, man. What's on your mind?
I think that's American. Well, but there's so many of these guys. I couldn't show you all of them, and all kinds of different ethnic accents. But No, that's good to hear. I just need to figure out how to formulate a clean thesis about what exactly we'll be doing, because it would be nice to focus on accent, but I think you're right that it's really hard to ignore all of these other cues you're getting as to social status and stuff like that. But I guess I mean, a nice way to formulate what we'd want to do with the paper is to say that even in this alternate universe where things could have been very different, where people could have spoken very differently from how they do in the real world, you still end up with something like a mapping of the accents. I mean, there's at least an internal logic to it, right? So the fascists, because they are so nationally and culturally invested in their cultural heritage, they sort of they stick with it, they hearken to it. No, yeah, exactly, something like that, right? Like we spoke about yesterday. This is narrative support. It helps the reader orient in the world and just get a sense of who are these characters. So I just need to get a sort of good formulation of that thesis, I think, and to think about whether we just want to focus on accent. I mean, the good thing about focusing on accent is you could go on and on with this. There's so many characters I haven't shown you. And just to focus on accent and the key characters might allow you to get a firm grip on those. But let me try to come up with a thesis. I guess it could be like a study, like you just mentioned, of how are voice qualities used to help build this universe. How is accent used to either to evoke stereotypes and associations from the real world in this fictional universe, something like that. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Perhaps we can be more general about it and say voice quality or something like that. Or that even won't do if we want to get into the lexicon also. What's a good term that would encompass both of those? I don't know if you have one ready. Right, we could also just mention those features. I mean, we could make it mostly about accent, and you could mention some of the others when they're relevant, like I think what you're suggesting now. Oh, dialect includes everything, huh? Yeah, that's right, word choice and all the rest. So you could do that, and I guess you could pick out certain key, right, accent just one, that's right, yeah. So I guess we could talk about dialect and how dialect helps the player navigate, and just pick out, say 4 characters or 5 characters, 1 character for each of the major ideologies, so as not to be sort of completely subjective about it. No, exactly. So you could have like the main character for each of the game's 4 or 5 ideologies, and then, so for example, Everard, Claire, the big fat man, he would be the main. He's the main guy for communism. I think that's fair to say. And Joyce is the main for ultra-liberalism. And moralism, I'm not quite sure. I'll have to make that judgment to see which character has the most text or something like that, or which character is the most important. And fascism, that would be René down here. The guy with the really strong French accent. This guy right here. That's fascism.
Officer, what can this old carabinier do for you?
That's actually a nice gallery. You have René, who's this... yeah, there are a lot of male characters, but there are also... the sort of character that this whole mystery revolves around is actually female. I haven't shown her to you. She has, I think, a general American accent, if I'm not mistaken. She actually comes from a part of... Right. No, there are some stereotypes that the game draws on, and it doesn't... I mean, some of them it sort of contradicts or explicitly subverts, but others it sort of happily draws on.
You see...
let's go up to Clache, who's the... She's sort of the... There's also...
Oh, hello, dear. There you
Lena
are again.
here. I think she has a sort of southern drawl. She's a very nice woman. She tries to help you the best she can.
Oh, yes. A zoologist. A cryptozoologist, to be more precise.
Cryptozoologist.
It's a pseudoscience that attempts to
That's one opinion, yes. And people are entitled to their opinions.
She's used to playing off such insults casually.
My apologies, ma'am. I did not mean to.
It's not a hobby, dear. It's a subfield of zoology. One specializing in animal species that are so exceedingly searching for such...
The quality she's completely internalized.
Right. I mean, that would be another thing you could focus on is stereotypes. Linguistic stereotypes. I mean, that would be an entirely different focus, which might also be interesting to focus on. I'm not sure what we should go for exactly. No, that's. I think you're right about that. And in some ways, Kim here is actually a sort of Asian, Korean, Japanese stereotype. He's smart. He's very calculated. He's very he's sort of mathematically inclined. He has bad eyesight. He what else? I think there are a few other things where he conforms to a sort of Asian stereotype. Yeah, no, I think that's a good observation you have there, because if they really want to build the universe, if this is meant to help the player orient in the world, then you won't do that by subverting these stereotypes almost by definition, right? Because they're stereotypes, they're what you orient by in the world. So you have to import those stereotypes wholesale, and that happens in a lot of cases. Yeah, yeah, we won't. I mean, we'll have to talk about stereotypes. It's just a matter of, will that be the sort of telos, the sort of main goal of our investigation? Will that be to see which stereotypes are subverted, or whether the game in general subverts stereotypes, or will it more so be an investigation of how the game builds the player's expectations without focusing on that? Right. Right. We can. I mean, we can definitely discuss it, and I think we should. Yeah, and it is interesting. There is a kind of mechanical trade-off there with the stereotypes helping the player orient in the game world, and that being, you can set that in tension with a kind of social justice agenda whereby you would want to subvert them. This is Klashe, who's a major character.
What brings you up here again?
She's meant to be, I think, sort of sexy and enticing. She has an affair with the guy. She had an affair with the guy who was killed, and you're trying to get some info about who was this guy from her. She's a young woman. I think she has a very breathy voice, apropos your research interests.
Sure. Vredefort, Republic of Oranje. I'm 28.
I think she speaks General American. When she said Vredefort, that sounds more like Dutch or something like that, but that's because it is a Dutch city and she comes from there, so she knows how to pronounce it. But I think in general she speaks General American, if I'm not mistaken.
Something stupid.
Want to hear what's stupid? Somewhere in a one-room apartment on Boogie Street, his partner, Emil he's warm, Mullins replies.
No. More stupid. Oranie's lit. Guarani's literature. It's what I studied at the university. Fear of failure, fear of death, how it sucks to be Guaranis. All national literatures are. Only the name of the nation changes.
If that's true, then Revacholian Lit would fit you like a glove.
Nothing. I do nothing with it. It's not very cool, but what can you do? Vredefort, Republic of Oranje. I'm afraid you can't, officer.
Why is that?
Because it's
yes, she's 28 years old.
At an undisclosed location on the coast, along with cash and
there are various, I mean, explicit indications in the game that she's attractive. Another character mentions it.
Thank you for your candor. Why?
They say so in your tourist brochure. Keep travel documents away from your person when west of the river.
Right.
If I were to lie to you, I would come up with a more mainstream name than Clausia Mondu. It's a weird name. Okie dokie.
If any of this made her nervous, it's...
The record. So official.
Yes, miss. I hope you don't mind.
He was 42.
Yeah, she's like super creaky.
42? Are you sure?
He had many scars that made him appear older.
Isn't she also breathy?
No.
Or is that just me?
We even celebrated his birthday like some weeks ago. It was a funny 2 days. He had little reason to lie to me.
We were slightly off then. Thank you for clearing it up.
The adversary one.
Yes. Light blue.
Right.
They were like little blue galaxies. It was strange, seeing those eyes in his fucked up face.
Let me just see if there's anything else I should show you. No, I think I've shown you some of the main players here, and again, like I mentioned to you, there's
gracefully.
There are enough lines, just spoken lines in this game to be the equivalent of all of the Harry Potter books combined. So we have no chance of getting through anything like, I mean, even a fraction of it. But these are some of the main players in the game, the characters you've already heard. There is one character that kind of bothers me, is that there is one fascist who doesn't have a French accent. I might show you that guy last, just to see if you can get any kind of read on him. He's a crypto-fascist. The game tells you explicitly. So maybe that has something to do with it. He's kind of underground. He's called Gary, and I'll just go to him. He's in the really rundown part of town, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe he's taken off actually at this point in the game. No. Yeah, I'm actually not sure where he is at this point. I could always get back to him. There's also YouTube videos of him speaking. Then there's this guy. He's I believe a homosexual, and maybe he's no, I'm not sure about anything else, but I believe he's homosexual, and he's a sort of I mean, he's a sort of stereotypically homosexual. He has very different relationships, and he goes into town at night and does unsavory stuff in the eyes of some people in the game. And let's hear how he talks.
Hi again, Gendarme. You did? And how did you like him?
I mean, it's very sort of smooth, soft voice, I would say.
I told you, he can be very useful. I guess that's the charm of powerful people.
Right.
Friends, I told you. Sunday friends. Friends who like to get together from time to time. That he won't be there when times get tough. I guess. It is.
Yeah, Brady.
What about me, gendarme? Admiring the atmosphere. What about you, officer? Really? Well, I look forward to that. Oh yes, let's see. He knocked on my door a few days after the lynching. I think he was going through the entire building, asking questions. Sure. Anything else on your mind? Bye-bye, gendarme.
I guess he doesn't have. I guess he doesn't have that distinguished S sound that you might associate with. I mean, that's part of the usual stereotype.
Hi again, gendarme.
I don't think he has that.
You did? And how did you like him? Ah, shoot. Why not? Friends, I told you. Sunday friends. Friends who like to get together from time to time.
I mean, his S sounds standard to me.
That he won't be there when times get tough, I guess. It is. On Sundays. What about me, gendarme? Admiring the atmosphere. What about you, officer? Well, here's to you. Oh yes, let's see.
But again, I mean, it's tricky with this game because it's not
muscular, handsome.
It's not simply either stereotype affirming or denying. I know Kim Kitsuragi here, for instance, he's a homosexual, and there are barely any homosexual stereotypes sticking to him. And I think there is another character too, and I don't think he's characteristically homosexual either. So it is a little bit tricky. But definitely, I think his voice is supposed to evoke homosexuality. I don't think that the sort of soft, breathy tone is a coincidence for this guy. Right. He's got quite a high pitch, I think. But anyway, I guess it's mostly. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to do, I guess, a sort of socio-linguistic, I'm not sure that's the right term, but analysis of this game, just because it has so many accents in it, and it's extremely ambitious with the world building. I mean, it's very comprehensive, and it tries to make all of the pieces fit each other so that the characters speak with an accent that's appropriate to their background. So there is a lot of meat on this game, I think, for analysis, for the type of investigation that we're proposing. And I just want to make sure that before I begin in earnest, I have a clear fix on exactly what it is that we want to investigate. And from my point of view, there are like two ways of approaching. One is to say, well, how does this help the player orient in the world? And that, for me, that's theoretically very interesting. I mean, how does it help you build associations and assumptions about the characters that you encounter? How does it help you navigate this world? But you could also just see, well, does this game affirm or subvert the kinds of accents and dialects that exist in the real world, and to what effect, and be more open-ended about it in that way? Whatever we do, I just think we need a clear thesis statement to cut through all of this, because there are so many characters, like I keep saying. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. There aren't actually that many, but there are at least like 50 or 60 very recognizable characters, I would say. But many of them obviously aren't as central as the ones you've been listening to. Oh, that's actually interesting. Yeah. So yeah, it's not like this just happens in narratives, right? It's also something that we do in the real world to get a fix on our social environments. So, but we may want. I mean, do you think we may want to talk about dialects instead of accents, and then just focus on sort of key characters, like 5 key characters, something like that, that really help the player to navigate the world? And that's not to say that. I mean, in discussing Joyce, you could also discuss Cindy, for instance, who stands next to Joyce, right? And just throw her out as a sort of contrast case. I think we could do that. Just pick like 5 absolutely key characters and analyze those. See how they help set the stage for this world. Yeah, no, I think that's right. Right, it just helps with categorization and with social navigation, right? You need, in pretty much the same way as it would help in this game, it helps you to discern some of the social fault lines of reality, right? You have this notion of the shibboleth in real life, whereby, you know, people were able to determine, are you in the in-group or in the out-group? Are you someone to be scared of or someone to root for, this kind of thing. I think it works pretty much the same in this game. So I think we could do something like that, and we might position our study as an elaboration of existing studies that have more just looked at accent in very binary terms. It's like either you're against us or you're with us. So the British English accent, that's supposed to connote the villain, and then the good guys, they speak American English, right? It's very simple binary Manichaean stuff, whereas this game is much more elaborate. It's much more ambitious with its linguistic world building. Right, that's a good point, that the game helps us see these principles, and that they run through the game as they run through the real world, right? These shortcuts, I think that's also a very good way of putting it. They help us navigate the world. And also just to fill in some of the formal blanks. So I think one of the first things you do when you hear about Joyce and you hear from another character that she's this ultra-liberal, you have some idea about what she stands for in very abstract terms, but as soon as you hear her voice, you get all of these associations to posh or at least upper-class British culture. So you have you get a feel, not just a propositional conviction, but a feel for who she might be as a person, right? You import all of this, all of these assumptions about who she is, and the same with Kuno. You get a sense not just of who he is, but of the kind of background like that a character like him would have. And it turns out later in the game, if you investigate a little bit, if you prod a little bit, you find his father lying in bed, just passed out from alcohol consumption. I mean, he's drunk as hell. He's just out, and he's not able to take care of the kid, of Kuno. And that's just keeping totally in line with the kind of accent that he has, if you ask me. If you remember Kuno, the small kid with the strong accent, sort of working class accent. His father lies in here. He's passed out from drug and alcohol abuse in this not so nice looking place. He's sleeping right here.
The aging alcoholic is still there, breathing. The air in the room.
Right, that's Kuno's dad right there. No, Kuno is definitely, Kuno is a kid. I think you hear somewhere that he's 12 years old, and he is this street urchin who tries to make a living in the streets, and he actually, he's involved in drug stuff like that. It's kind of a grim story. His father beats him. Yeah, he's a kid. Yeah, I should have mentioned. I thought maybe it's not as clear to you as it is to me when you watch the screen of your device, but I'm sitting here with the big screen TV. And it's the same for Kuno S. She's also a street urchin. You can tell when I stand right by her, she's not nearly as tall as I am. These are just kids. And she has kind of the same accent.
Trying to snuff me out. Get away, pig.
Get away, pig. So they found each other in the streets pretty much. That's Kuno S, by the way. That's a girl. She's not quite as central to the story as is Kuno, but Kuno is a kid. But I guess what I'll do now is to take into account what you've said and to try to formulate a thesis that seems manageable for a paper like this. A paper that's, I guess, mostly in media studies, but draws on social linguistics and stuff like that, and that really tries to. I mean, I really love the psychological angle, like we just talked about, right? Just this stuff helps the player navigate, but it's also subverts expectations in some ways, but mostly it just helps the player navigate this strange parallel universe. Here's Kuno again. Here's just a kid.
Does Kuno care? Yeah, the kingdom of Kuno. The fuck do you want with it?
The fuck do you want with it?
Look at that fucking shit. You're trying to get Kuno killed. Fuck does Kuno know? Kuno's not a fucking acrobat.
The lieutenant takes a quick...
It's a trap, Kuno! Don't climb it, Kuno!
So she chimes in Kuno S, but they are different characters.
Dunno. Kiptas gardener used to work there.
Kipt is a pejorative term used to describe people of South Seminese or Erie-Uppergite descent. It used to be a common first name among the Erie-Uppergites of Ilmarin. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, that's what Kuno said. She couldn't handle the heat, so she took off. Kuno can take it.
Do you think that's Cockney, what you're hearing here?
Nothing to Kuno.
It might well be.
The fuck does this have to do with the Kuno? Kuno doesn't give a shit who she is.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, whatever. Kuno doesn't give a shit. Yeah, the kingdom of Kuno. The fuck do you want with it? Yeah, whatever. Kuno doesn't give a shit. The fuck about it? Just a couple of pigs sniffing around in the dirt. That seems pretty fucking suspicious to Kuno.
Yeah, you tell the faggoty, Kuno.
Fuck are you talking about? What is this contusion shit?
No, but I mean it's it's definitely sort of working class, lower class. Right.
He says you're stupid, Kuno.
British
They wanna
English.
make you stupid again.
The buck-toothed gremlin lets go of his head. Looks like the attack has passed. The pain of the word recedes.
You're
Right.
Kuno does.
But I mean I guess we got what we needed, right? I mean you get a sense of the game and of the kinds of characters that populate it, and how there's a lot of linguistic diversity here. And I think that the whole premise of the the whole premise of the game is that you have this alternative universe that's in many ways meant to comment on our own world. So there are these parallels, but there are also these differences and divergences. And it's probably not a coincidence that accents are one of the things that mirror how accents work in the real world, right? Because it does help the player navigate the world and see who's upper class, who's lower class, who's in group, who's out group, who's native, who's non-native, this kind of stuff. So I think there is a super interesting article somewhere. It's just a matter of just finding that perfect thesis statement that really cuts through to an interesting aspect of it. But I think we've made progress on that front, and I think it's very good that you have some sense of what it is. Oh, fantastic! That sounds good. That sounds great. And all of these characters, I mean, at least almost all of them. If we need to reference these voices again, you can find them on YouTube. People have uploaded all of this stuff, or I can go back in the game and find them. So that should work. So I guess I'll just over the next day or two, I'll just see if I can't come up with a nice formulation of exactly what would be nice to do in the paper and send it to you guys, and you can come back on it, obviously. But just so we are all on the same page with regard to what it is that I'm doing, and then I'll get started writing the actual paper. I went through the game again to make sure that I run into all of the different characters. It's quite a long game, but I've been playing a whole lot to get through it, and I'll be at the end of it in a couple of days. And I guess once I'm at the end of it and I know that I've encountered all of the interesting characters, I'll be able to formulate exactly what it is that I think would be interesting to do. You know, keeping in mind your feedback and what you've said. No, it was fun, and it's good for you to see what it is. It's actually a super interesting game. You should play it if you ever get the chance. No, sounds great. But what do you think about that? Should we do that? Should we? I'll come back to all of you with a sort of thesis statement as far as that's possible in a couple of days, and we'll see if we can all agree on exactly what it is I'll be trying to do. So we're all on the same page. It should only take me a couple of days more to play through the games to make sure that I have all the characters in plain sight. Fantastic. Sounds great. Okay, thanks so much, Mitja, for joining me for this stream. Yeah, it's torture. No, it's awesome. It's great, but it's not just frivolous. I mean, I really did need to go through the game again in order to remember the different characters and what they stand for and stuff like that. So I'm trying to be what do you say? I'm trying to be disciplined about it. Yeah, for sure. Okay, fantastic. Thanks. We'll talk soon then. I'll come into the office. I think tomorrow we might talk then. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Save game. Okay, I'll end the recording and I will see you soon. No, I know. See you soon. Have a good one. I'll end the recording.